So I, 27-year-old female, have a younger brother, Mike, 21-year-old male. He is the definition of a man-child and a mama's boy, always complaining, always expecting others to bow to him. Just overall, and jerk. Ever since he was born, my parents fussed over him for everything. He's not special needs or had a traumatic birth or anything of the sort. He was just born. And my parents completely discarded me. My mom, 50-year-old female especially, she went from a loving mother to one of those boy moms that people make fun of on the internet. My father, 50-year-old male, still showed me love and support. But he's always been too much of a coward to stand up to my mother and let me win at least once. The only one who stood for me was my grandpa, 76-year-old male, who always called my parents out on their nonsense and never liked my brother. I remind him of his late wife, my grandma, and we have a very special bond. But he lives on the other side of the country, and I could never see him often. Mike knows our mom prefers him and loves to shove it in my face. Because of this and his behavior, we've always been at odds. He's spoiled, a brat, and an awful human. I can't remember how many times I ended up in trouble for things I did better than him, or for things he framed me with. His only talent is his football skills. He won a scholarship to a nice college out of state. My parents didn't spend a dime on my education because apparently my fund had been used to cover expenses after a fire, just for me to discover years later that said money was given to Mike to buy a car and a house. It's at a public university that I met Lucas. He was the first person I was really drawn to there. Of course, I met new people who are now my dearest friends, and thanks to them and Lucas, who was my best friend for years before we got together, I managed to move out of my parents' house. Now both Lucas and I are well known in our fields and have very good salaries. Now to the main issue. Lucas proposed to me a year ago. We're very private people, so we didn't post it on social media or anything. And when I told my parents, they dismissed it with a, "That's nice," I'm starting to think they downright didn't listen to me at all. We decided that we wanted a nice but simple ceremony and reception with our friends and relatives. Lucas convinced me to invite my parents and brother, but they never responded to the invite. And whenever I went to visit and began to talk about my wedding, without mentioning it was a wedding, my mom would always speak over me and about my brother's accomplishments and wild adventures. At one point, I got fed up with it and interrupted my mom to tell her that there was an event I was planning to organize, whose date was unmovable. She told me that they couldn't attend because my brother was playing the last game of the season that very same day and wanted them to be there. Of course, this favoritism didn't surprise me. They missed my ballets, shows, and both my high school and university graduation for things about him. At this point, I wanted to be petty. I told both my parents that it wasn't a problem to miss this event, purposely omitted the fact that this event was my wedding, and didn't insist further. Flash forward to a few weeks ago, I got married. It was perfect. My family, Lucas's family, and our friends were all there, and we had a blast. My grandpa was happy to give me away, and it was just perfect. My relatives asked me multiple times why my parents weren't there with us. I was honest, and simply said they had my brother's game to attend and couldn't come. They gave me a few looks, and my grandpa was visibly angry for a while, but otherwise, nothing strange happened. After the reception, Lucas and I left for our honeymoon, and were phone-free for the whole duration of the trip. But once we got back, we discovered that a shoot storm was welcoming us home. I turned my phone on and was unable to even unlock it before a storm of notifications popped up. Most of them were from my mother and brother. Mike called me all sorts of nasty names and insulted me because apparently one of my paternal aunts posted the photos of the wedding on Facebook and captioned it with a very obvious dig at my parents, especially my mom, for missing the wedding. The post apparently went viral in my parents' community, and they've been publicly shamed for their mistreatment of me. It also turns out that my grandpa personally visited my parents to go on a tirade to shame my father, his son, to the point of tears. And this seemed to be my father's breaking point because he was so distraught for missing his only daughter's wedding and for his father's disapproval that he finally rebelled against my mom and is threatening divorce unless she makes it up to me. I think that's the reason why my mom has been spamming my phone with messages, at first insulting and threatening and then downright pitiful, full of begging and pity parties. Now I'm at home with my husband, deciding how to approach the situation. Most of my relatives, even those I didn't invite to the wedding, reached out to apologize for what I went through, and to claim they had no idea this was happening at home. Can't blame any of my relatives. They all live with my grandpa on the other side of the country or in another state. But my mom's sisters and friends are belittling me for not telling my mom about the wedding, because now she's inconsolable at the thought of having missed my wedding. Personally, I think she just claims that to save face, but I'm not sure. The latest messages from my father and mother seem extremely saddened and hurt for missing my wedding. Now my family is divided on 3 fronts. The majority, who is sticking by my side, my maternal aunts shaming me for hurting my mom's feelings, and my maternal grandparents, who are adamant that I forgive my mom in light of her atonement. My best friends are telling me not to listen to them. So, am I the idiot? To add, thank you so much for the feedback and love, it's overwhelming. I'm going to address the popular questions here. 1. I did inform my parents about my wedding. I sent traditional on-paper invites to all my guests, and was notified that all invites had reached their addressees. I did not receive any answer from my parents and Mike, a few very distant relatives, and some people on Lucas's side. I did reach out to all of them through message to double-check, and those who hadn't replied told me they couldn't come. I asked my parents and brother via text, but they didn't respond. I was left on read. Knowing them and given all the things I had to plan, I didn't bother insisting. 2. I didn't repeat the date of my wedding because I had already been told there was my brother's game. Plus, every time I insisted on highlighting my celebrations to get an answer, I was always told that it wasn't that important and to not be pissy and a bother, because some things were simply more important than me. At this point, I think it's fair for me to not insist anymore. It's not worth the effort. 3. I didn't keep my wedding a secret. I avoided telling my parents that it was my wedding to see if they would be interested in the slightest. But surprise, surprise, they weren't. Despite this, I did openly talk about my wedding with my aunts and uncles. My mother was in the room with us a few times when I discussed venues or dress shops with my aunt, the Facebook post one, but sometimes Mom was on the phone, and other times she was just chatting with other people. She never paid attention. When I talked about it during reunions, she smiled and said, "That's great, dear," and then would change the subject. Radio silence on Dad and Mike. 4. I kept in contact with them because, well, all the times I tried to go no contact in the past years, I've been harassed. I tried after my high school, bachelor's, and master's graduations, to which they never bothered to show up for reasons involving my brother. Every time I was shamed for daring to turn my back on family by my parents, my brother, my maternal aunts, and my maternal grandparents. I think the turning point here is that all those times Lucas wasn't by my side. We started dating a little after my last attempt at going no contact, and now that I have him here, I feel more confident in my stance. But before that, I wasn't this confident. As I already stated, all my paternal side lives on the other side of the country and wasn't aware of how they treated me. I did try to expose my parents once, at 14. My aunts, uncles, and grandpa reprimanded them. They faked being sorry, and then once home, I got the beating and gaslighting of my life for lying. After that, I kept in contact regularly with my paternal side, but omitting my parents' abuse out of fear, which, to be honest, still haunts me to this day. Only Grandpa knew, but he was always threatened to be alienated from me if he tried anything. 5. My parents and I are not from the same city. I live in a city an hour's drive from my parents' small town, and they don't know my new address because once my brother tried to break into my apartment to steal some cash, and my mother backed him up, claiming that siblings share their goods. Now I moved, and I'll be sure not to tell them where I live. 6. My parents didn't buy my brother a car and a house before he even started high school. They bought him a car for his 16th birthday and a house near his college when he began freshman year. They didn't spend the money of my fund right away, they just lied to me to use it later for my brother, keeping it stored for later in the meantime. Now for an update. Update is posted. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You handled that like a pro, well done. This internet stranger is really proud of you. Now continue to handle it like a pro. Cut off the aunts who are shaming you for hurting your mom's feelings. She did that to you for the whole of your life. Cut off the maternal grandparents who consider your mom has atoned for her behavior because has she hell. Stick with the majority who are on your side. the family and friends who supported you at your wedding and continue to support you now. The rest can go to hell in a handcart. Comment 2. Not the idiot, you invited them. You attempted to remind them several times. They made it very clear that it wasn't a priority to them. Person, I appreciate your concern. However, I not only invited my parents, but also tried to include them in conversations about the wedding several times. My mom made it very clear that it wasn't a priority to her, and that my brother's event was. As you might be well aware, this is a pattern for them. I can't make people make me a priority. I won't address this again. Thank you for understanding. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through all this. A lot has happened since my last post. After the honeymoon, Lucas and I were trying to settle back into our routine when the messages from my parents and brother started flooding in. My mom's messages were a mix of anger and desperation, while my dad's were more subdued, filled with regret and sadness. Mike, on the other hand, was just plain nasty, calling me names and accusing me of ruining the family. It was overwhelming, to say the least. One evening, while Lucas and I were having dinner, my phone buzzed with a call from my dad. I hesitated but decided to pick up. He sounded broken, almost unrecognizable. He apologized profusely for missing the wedding and admitted that he had been a coward all these years, letting my mom dictate everything. He said he was tired of living in her shadow and wanted to make things right. He even mentioned that he was considering divorce if she didn't change her ways. This was a huge revelation for me. My dad, who had always been passive, was finally standing up for himself and for me. The next day, I received a letter from my grandpa. He had written it by hand, and it was filled with his usual straightforward wisdom. He told me that he had given my parents a piece of his mind, and that he was proud of me for standing up for myself. He also mentioned something that caught me off guard. My mom had been hiding a secret from me for years. Apparently, she had another child before she met my dad, a daughter she gave up for adoption. This was a news. It explained a lot about her behavior towards me and why she was so obsessed with Mike. She was trying to make up for the guilt of giving up her first child by overcompensating with her son. I didn't know how to process this information. Should I confront my mom? Should I try to find my half-sister? Lucas was supportive, as always, but he left the decision up to me. I decided to sit on it for a while and focus on the immediate issue. My parents' reaction to missing the wedding. A few days later, my mom showed up at our doorstep unannounced. She looked disheveled and had clearly been crying. She begged me to forgive her, saying she had no idea the event she missed was my wedding. She claimed she would have come if she had known. I didn't buy it. I told her that she had plenty of opportunities to show interest in my life, but she chose to ignore them. I also brought up the secret about her first child. She was stunned and didn't deny it. Instead, she broke down, saying she had been living with the guilt for years and didn't know how to tell me. This revelation changed the dynamics of our conversation. For the first time, I saw my mom as a flawed human being rather than the villain of my story. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it gave me some context. I told her that while I understood her pain, it didn't justify how she treated me. I needed time to process everything and wasn't ready to forgive her just yet. Meanwhile, my dad was making good on his promise to stand up to my mom. He moved out of their house and started staying with a friend. He called me regularly, trying to rebuild our relationship. It was awkward at first, but I appreciated his effort. He even suggested that we go visit my grandpa together, something we hadn't done in years. As for Mike, he continued to be a thorn in my side. He sent me a series of nasty messages, accusing me of tearing the family apart. I decided to block him for my own peace of mind. I didn't need his negativity, especially when I was dealing with so much already. In the midst of all this, I decided to look into finding my half-sister. I reached out to a private investigator and gave him the limited information I had. It was a long shot, but I felt compelled to try. Lucas was supportive, though he cautioned me to be prepared for any outcome. A week later, the investigator got back to me with some promising leads. He found a woman who matched the description and age of my mom's first child. She lived in a nearby state and had a family of her own. I was nervous, but decided to reach out to her. I sent her a letter explaining who I was and why I was contacting her. It was a long shot, but I felt it was something I needed to do. While waiting for a response, I continued to navigate the fallout with my family. My maternal aunts were relentless, accusing me of being heartless and selfish. I decided to cut ties with them for my own sanity. My paternal relatives, on the other hand, were incredibly supportive. They rallied around me, offering words of encouragement and love. One evening, as Lucas and I were winding down, I received a message from the woman I had contacted. She confirmed that she was indeed my half-sister and was open to meeting me. I was overwhelmed with emotions, excitement, fear, hope. Lucas held my hand and told me that whatever happened, he would be there for me. We arranged to meet at a cafe halfway between our cities. When I walked in, I immediately recognized her. We had the same eyes. We talked for hours, sharing our life stories and getting to know each other. She told me that she had always wondered about her birth family but never had the courage to look into it. Meeting her was surreal and healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. As I navigated these new relationships and revelations, I realized that my life was changing in ways I couldn't have imagined. My dad was making an effort to be a better father. My mom was grappling with her past, and I had found a sister I never knew I had. It was a lot to take in, but I felt a sense of closure and new beginnings. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for loving my daughter more than my fiancé? I gave birth a few weeks ago to our daughter. As I held her for the first time and looked into her eyes, I said, "I didn't realize I could love a person this much," and cried. She is perfect and beautiful. My mom looked at me and said that feeling never goes away, which made us both ugly cry, lol. It was a really special moment. My fiancé was quiet but smiled, but later privately said he was hurt. He said he loved us both the same, and me saying that made it seem like I loved our daughter more than him. I just gave him a "are you serious" look, and he dropped it, but yesterday he brought it up again. I told him that honestly, yes, I love and cherish our daughter and have never experienced this kind of love for another human being. He said most normal people would agree with him that it's a hurtful comment and would take offense to it due to the implication. Am I the jerk? Now for an update, it's a quick update, so I didn't feel like it was worth it to make a whole new post. So I had a heart-to-heart with my fiancé, and we came to a few conclusions together. It went very well. We read through the post and comments together. 1, he wasn't jealous of our daughter's role in my life, but rather our bond together. He didn't have that instant love connection that we read about all new parents having, like what I experienced. I didn't realize this was actually very normal for new dads and new moms too. Thanks for educating me. We are the first in our social circle to have children, so we didn't have a lot of in-real-life people to inquire about it. His perspective is, I love this human being we made, but I don't know her, while I was thunderstruck. He hasn't had that connection, so doesn't get it yet, and that it will take time, months, or even a year. I'll be more patient and aware of this and read up more on new dad experiences to learn more. 2, he also agrees he not only could have expressed that better, but also choose better timing. Voicing it to me after a 14-hour labor, and then again when I'm exhausted and grumpy with achy breasts is maybe not the best time, lol. He also agrees marriage counseling would be good, just because. We are both opinionated, logical-thinking engineers who, at the same time, love each other deeply. We could use better mediation other than Reddit, no offense, guys. 3, he was not furious about me writing this Reddit post, lol. We laughed over the comments together, calling for me to get ready to break up. But we also really enjoyed reading the experiences of new parents. It helped us both feel validated and sane and see each other's perspectives better. 4, I showed him that Ryan Reynolds video and we both died laughing, lol. We will now be eating a disgusting amount of hot dogs while watching Deadpool with our baby girl. We also agreed that there's different types of love like parental, platonic, romantic, and Ryan Reynolds. Thanks, peeps. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot, so I got super triggered by your post and decided to ask my husband about this. He said to tell you this. He's an old guy in a very traditional, very large engineering company, and he is upper management. He has a standard piece of advice to all new fathers, that from now on, first you are a father, then a husband, then an employee, engineer, and then you fit in other family and friends. The child comes first, even above his wife, and he should expect her to have the same priorities. OP, he advises that this idiot is going to hold this against you for the rest of your lives. Before you get married, we suggest counseling because how could you marry a man who is going to be petty jealous of his own child? I'm in agreement with my hubby. I would never marry a man who didn't immediately thank the heavens and me and think that the whole world must have come into being just so our child could be born into it to us. Congratulations. Comment 2. Not the idiot. I've been with my husband for 40 years, and to this day, I love my 2 adult daughters more than my husband. He knows it and is okay with it. It's a different kind of love. It's not romantic like with a partner. It's endless, selfless, without conditions. It's to the soul kind of love. Your husband needs therapy to get over being jealous of his own baby. Now for the update, hey everyone, thanks for reading. 3 months have passed since our daughter was born, and life has been very eventful. The initial euphoria of becoming parents has settled into a more routine, albeit still challenging, daily life. My fiancé and I have had our ups and downs, but we've been working through things together. One of the biggest changes has been my return to work. I had to go back earlier than I wanted because we need the income. My fiancé is still working from home, which has been a blessing and a curse. On one hand, he's there to help with the baby during the day. On the other hand, it's been hard for him to balance work and parenting. We've had more than a few arguments about who should be doing what and when. One particularly rough day, I came home to find him completely frazzled. The baby had been crying nonstop, and he hadn't been able to get any work done. I took over, and he just collapsed on the couch. Later that night, we had a long talk about how we were both feeling overwhelmed. We decided to hire a part-time nanny to help out during the day. It was a tough decision financially, but we both agreed it was necessary for our sanity. The nanny has been a godsend. She's great with our daughter, and it's given my fiancé some much-needed breathing room. However, it's also brought up some unexpected feelings for him. He admitted to me that he feels guilty for not being able to handle everything on his own. He feels like he's failing as a father because he needs help. I tried to reassure him that needing help doesn't make him a bad father, but I could tell he was still struggling with it. Around this time, we also started marriage counseling. It's been eye-opening for both of us. One of the things that came up was my fiancé's relationship with his own father. He never really talked about it much before, but in counseling, he opened up about how his dad was always working and never really around. He said he doesn't want to be like that, but he's scared he's heading down the same path. This revelation helped me understand why he's been so hard on himself. We've also been trying to make time for each other as a couple. It's been tough with a newborn, but we've managed to have a few date nights. One night, we decided to go out for dinner while the nanny watched the baby. It was the first time we had been out alone since she was born. We talked about everything but the baby, and it felt like we were reconnecting. It was a reminder that we need to nurture our relationship too, not just our roles as parents. But not everything has been smooth sailing. A few weeks ago, we had a big fight. My fiancé had been working late a lot, and I was feeling like I was doing everything on my own. I snapped at him, and he snapped back. It escalated quickly, and he ended up storming out. He didn't come back until the next morning. When he did, he looked exhausted and defeated. He told me he had spent the night driving around, thinking about everything. He said he felt like he was failing me and our daughter. We had another long talk, and he admitted that he's been feeling depressed. He said he feels like he's not good enough and that he's letting us down. It broke my heart to hear him say that. I told him that I love him and that we're in this together. We agreed that he would see a therapist to help him work through his feelings. Since then, things have been slowly getting better. He's been seeing a therapist regularly, and it's helping. He's starting to be more open about his feelings, and we're communicating better. We're still a work in progress, but we're making strides. One thing that has really helped is finding a support group for new parents. We've met other couples who are going through similar struggles, and it's been comforting to know we're not alone. We've made some new friends, and it's been great to have people to talk to who understand what we're going through. Looking back, I realize how much we've both grown in the past 3 months. We've faced some tough challenges, but we've also had some beautiful moments. Watching my fiancé bond with our daughter has been one of the most heartwarming things I've ever seen. He's still working on building that connection, but I can see it growing stronger every day. As for me, I've learned to be more patient and understanding. I've realized that it's okay to ask for help, and that we don't have to do everything on our own. We're a team and we're stronger together. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for banning my mother-in-law after she sabotaged my daughter's tiny kitchen and made her throw up? My husband and I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I am 6 months pregnant with a boy. We appreciate that our parenting style is very different from that of our parents. We decided to promote certain autonomous behaviors from a young age. Due to my own experience with an eating disorder caused by my upbringing, we prioritize autonomy in food for our daughter and plan to do the same for our son. To foster this, we set up a tiny semi-functional kitchen for our kids. It includes a small functional fridge, and my husband even rigged the sink with a weak pump. Our daughter keeps snacks in the fridge in her tiny pantry. The snacks range from bananas to individual chocolates. She has the freedom to take a portion of whatever she wants. When she wants to cook, make a fruit salad, muesli, etc., she can do so. Of course, she doesn't have access to dangerous items, but she helps us cook when she wants to. This method has resulted in our daughter not going crazy at the prospect of candy or chips because she can decide when to have them. She also knows that once she eats her snacks for the week, that's it. So she has learned to pace herself. Now, to the actual story. My mother-in-law is in town for a while, and we let her stay with us. I actually like her, but it has been a struggle at times because she has very set ways. She is not a fan of the tiny kitchen. She thinks we're going to make our daughter obese by allowing her to have snacks when she wants. On the first night, she took away the muesli bar my daughter was eating because dinner was at 6 p.m. It was around 4 p.m. When we asked her to please give it back and not to interfere, she relented, and that was that. Or so I thought. Last night, our babysitter got sick, and we asked mother-in-law to watch our daughter. She agreed since it was just from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., and our daughter goes to bed at 7:30 p.m. We went out for dinner, and when we returned, we found our daughter awake and crying. I went to soothe her, and my husband went to talk to his mother. It turns out mother-in-law had made baked fish with boiled potatoes for dinner. My daughter told her she doesn't like fish because the smell makes her queasy. Mother-in-law insisted she had to eat everything on her plate, or she wouldn't be allowed to get up. Our daughter ate the potatoes and tried to eat the fish, but gagged. Mother-in-law got furious, took the plate away, and sent her to bed early. Our daughter got hungry and went to her kitchen to make some banana oats. Mother-in-law heard her, took the food away, threw it out, and brought out the rest of the fish, insisting she finish her dinner if she was hungry. Our daughter started crying and, while trying to eat, threw up at the table. Mother-in-law changed her and cleaned up, and that's when we came home. I was livid. I immediately told mother-in-law that her behavior was unacceptable and that she overstepped our boundaries. I made it clear that she would not be welcome to stay with us again if she couldn't respect our parenting choices. To make matters worse, I discovered the next morning that mother-in-law had unplugged our daughter's fridge and put it outside. It rained heavily overnight, and the fridge was completely ruined. When I confronted mother-in-law, she brushed it off, saying it was for our daughter's own good and that she didn't need a fridge. Almost forgot. The fridge is not in her room. I translated from German and put it through a chat so it would be mistake-free. I decided to send her the receipt for the fridge to underline how serious we are about this. Mother-in-law thinks I'm overreacting and that I'm being disrespectful to her as the grandmother. My husband is on my side, but he feels caught in the middle. So am I the jerk for refusing to let my mother-in-law come over again and sending her a receipt for our daughter's fridge? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Why do some grandparents think they have the right to demand respect when they don't respect the adult's children and their partner's parenting choices and decisions? Respect is earned, not given. She lost any respect you had for her when she damaged your daughter's property and took those actions. She isn't the parent here. You and your husband are, not the idiot. ETA. I make snack boxes for my daughters, who are 8 and almost 10, when they are on breaks from school. Once that box is empty, there is no more. I've been doing this since they were 4 and 5. Comment 2. Not the idiot, I'm in my 30s and still struggle with an eating disorder, overeating. Because I was given the whole, you can't leave until you clear your plate, starving kids in Africa. If you order it, you have to eat it all, my entire life. You are teaching your kid to self-moderate, creating good habits, and teaching them to eat when they are hungry, not when they are told. Your mother-in-law in one night essentially showed all of the reasons why what you are doing is right and her old ways are wrong. Now for the update, thank you for reading the last post. After the incident with my mother-in-law, things have been tense. We decided to take a break from her visits to give everyone some space. My husband and I focused on repairing the damage done to our daughter's sense of autonomy and trust. We bought a new fridge for her tiny kitchen and made sure she knew it was her space again. She seemed to bounce back quickly, but I could tell she was still wary of her grandmother. A couple of weeks later, my husband received a call from his mother. She apologized for her behavior and asked if she could come over to talk. We agreed, hoping she had a change of heart. When she arrived, she seemed genuinely remorseful. She explained that she had been raised in a very strict household and didn't know any other way to parent. She promised to respect our parenting choices moving forward. We decided to give her another chance, but with clear boundaries. During her next visit, things went smoothly at first. She was more respectful of our daughter's autonomy and even praised her for making a healthy snack. However, one evening, my husband and I overheard a conversation between our daughter and her grandmother that raised some red flags. Our daughter mentioned that she didn't like the way her grandmother talked about food and her body. My mother-in-law had been making comments about portion sizes and good and bad foods, which we had explicitly asked her not to do. We decided to address this immediately. My husband and I sat down with his mother and explained how damaging those comments could be, especially given my history with an eating disorder. She seemed to understand and apologized again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she still didn't fully grasp the importance of our approach. A few days later, my husband received a call from his sister. She had heard about the situation and wanted to offer her support. She shared that she had also struggled with their mother's strict parenting and had developed her own issues with food as a result. This revelation was eye-opening for my husband, who had always thought his sister was the perfect child. It made him even more determined to protect our daughter from the same fate. As we navigated these challenges, I found myself reflecting on my own upbringing. My parents had been well-meaning but controlling, and their obsession with my weight had led to my eating disorder. I didn't want my daughter to go through the same struggles. I realized that my mother-in-law's behavior was triggering old wounds for me, and I needed to address those feelings to move forward. One evening, my husband and I had a long conversation about our childhoods and how they shaped our parenting styles. We both agreed that we wanted to break the cycle of control and give our children the freedom to make their own choices. This conversation brought us closer together and strengthened our resolve to stand firm in our parenting decisions. Despite our best efforts, the situation with my mother-in-law came to a head one evening. She had been staying with us for a few days and seemed to be adjusting to our rules. However, I noticed that our daughter was becoming increasingly anxious around her. She started asking for permission to eat snacks and seemed hesitant to use her tiny kitchen. I decided to talk to my daughter privately to understand what was going on. She confided that her grandmother had been making her feel guilty about eating certain foods and had even taken away some of her snacks when we weren't around. I was furious, but also heartbroken that my daughter felt she couldn't come to us sooner. We confronted my mother-in-law once again, and this time she became defensive. She insisted that she was only trying to help and that we were being too lenient. My husband and I stood our ground and reiterated that our parenting choices were not up for debate. We told her that if she couldn't respect our boundaries, she would no longer be welcome in our home. The next morning, my mother-in-law packed her bags and left. It was a difficult decision, but we knew it was the right one for our family. We spent the next few days reassuring our daughter and rebuilding her confidence in her autonomy. In the midst of all this, I received an unexpected call from my own mother. She had heard about the situation and wanted to offer her support. We hadn't been very close in recent years, but this conversation opened the door to a deeper understanding between us. She admitted that she had made mistakes in her parenting and expressed regret for the impact it had on me. This conversation was a turning point in our relationship and helped me find some closure. As we moved forward, my husband and I focused on creating a positive and supportive environment for our children. We continued to encourage their autonomy and made sure they knew they could always come to us with any concerns. Our daughter seemed to thrive in this environment, and we were hopeful that our son would too. Thank you for reading. If you liked this video, you'll You'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day!